The sea had changed. Dr. Elena Voss stood on the observation deck of the Atlantis Crown, staring out at the endless gray-blue horizon. 30 years ago, this very stretch of ocean had been considered lifeless, a trench swallowed by mystery and myth. But now, thanks to advances in quantum sonar and pressure-resistant drones, the unexplored no longer meant unreachable. And in that unexplored void, the deep had begun whispering again. "Elena," came the soft voice of Captain Idris Marlowe, stepping beside her. "We got another ping." She turned to face him, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. Tall, clean-shaven, with an air of quiet authority, Marlowe looked every bit the naval commander, though the dark crescents under his eyes betrayed a lack of sleep. She nodded once, pulling the data tablet from her belt. "How deep?" she asked. "Deeper than it should be," he said. They both knew what that meant. The previous week, Argus 7, a deep-sea drone equipped with a prototype entanglement scanner, had picked up a metallic anomaly in the southern curve of the Puerto Rico Trench. The shape it returned to them didn't fit anything on record. The mass was enormous, displacing water like a freighter, yet the design was old, impossibly old. Not alien, not futuristic. Ancient. Naval. Human. The initial shape scan had returned a name, corroded into a massive iron hull by time and pressure, yet somehow still visible. USS Cyclops. It was absurd. The Cyclops had vanished in 1918 without a trace. No wreckage, no distress signal, no evidence it had ever existed beyond paperwork and grieving families. Its disappearance had become the genesis of the Bermuda Triangle mythos, an archetype of unsolved vanishings. But now it had surfaced, sort of, over a century later, 35,000 feet below where it had any right to be. "Elena," said Captain Marlowe again. "You're pale." She blinked and looked at him. "I think I stopped breathing." He gave a hollow chuckle, more nerves than amusement. "You and me both." They left the deck together and descended into the research center of the Atlantis Crown. The ship was a marvel, a floating laboratory funded by both military and private science conglomerate. Crew quarters, experimental bays, drone launch chambers. It was built for deep-sea work, the kind of missions where light didn't follow. Already gathered in the conference module were the rest of the team. Lieutenant Hess sat cross-legged on the floor, flicking a coin in and out of her knuckles, a habit she'd developed after 3 combat deployments. Her boots were scuffed from years in the field, but her eyes were sharp, observant. The newest member of the team, she didn't say much, but nothing escaped her gaze. Beside her stood Dr. Farouk Al-Sayed, the team's AI specialist, a wiry man with a restless intellect and a tendency to monologue when anxious. He was fiddling with the holographic display, trying to align the most recent sonar data with historical naval blueprint. At the far end of the room was Monroe, the project's lead oceanographer. Gray-bearded and slow-moving, Monroe had the air of someone who'd spent more time at sea than land. A quiet man with a voice like gravel, he seldom offered opinions unless they mattered. "Everyone's here," Elena said. "Let's get started." The hologram flickered to life above the table, an uneven 3D model of the Cyclops' ghostly form, resting at impossible depth. The hull was fractured in places but whole, its bulk seemingly untouched by currents or decay. It hovered there like a tomb that had never been buried. "This is the live composite from Argus 7, Al-Sayed explained. Scans show the ship suspended inside a vertical column of water, no floor beneath it, no surrounding trench wall, just hanging. "That's not how physics works," Hess said flatly. "No, it's not," Al-Sayed agreed. "Which is why I think we're dealing with a phenomenon beyond just pressure or geology. There's a localized gravitational anomaly around the vessel. It's as if something is holding it there." Marlowe crossed his arms. "Like what?" Elena stepped forward. "We don't know. But if this is really the USS Cyclops, it's been under pressure that should have crushed it into dust 100 years ago. And yet it's there. Whole. What if it was never crushed?" Monroe rasped. The room fell silent. What if it never sank? He continued. What if it fell somewhere else? No one had an answer. Elena exhaled slowly. We're going down. Hess raised an eyebrow. Full descent. We launch the Leviathan at dawn, she confirmed. We'll take a 6-man crew. Me, Hess, Farouk, Monroe, Captain Marlowe, and Argus 7 to scout ahead. We'll tether a data link to the Crown for surface contact. And if something goes wrong? Farouk asked. Then you're in the safest coffin ever built, Monroe muttered. No one laughed. That night, as the team prepped for descent, Elena reviewed the Cyclops' historical records one more time. The ship had carried 309 men, thousands of tons of manganese ore, and a seasoned captain named George Worley. It had departed from Barbados and vanished en route to Baltimore. There had been no storms, no pirate, no debris, just a line through time erased. She studied an old black-and-white photo of the crew, their faces grainy and stiff with age. One man at the edge of the group seemed to be staring straight at her through the years. His eyes were hollow, empty. She turned the tablet over and set it aside. At 0430 hours, the Leviathan was ready. The submersible was the most advanced in the world, shaped like a sleek, armored manta ray, plated with synthetic shell materials that resisted pressure like bone. It was designed for full crew immersion, with neural thread interfaces that linked the pilots directly to the subsystems. The descent began as the sun rose over the Atlantic, casting gold across the water's surface. They dropped fast, the world above turning to twilight, then night, then nothing. By 10,000 feet, all external light was gone. By 20,000 feet, the temperature had plummeted. By 30,000 feet, the trench had opened before them like the mouth of some sleeping beast. Elena, Marlowe said over the comms. We're seeing interference. Static laced the visuals. Outside, the water shimmered oddly, as though currents moved sideways. Argus 7 is 10 meters ahead, Farouk said, eyes scanning the drone's feed. It's pinging the ship now. A faint tone echoed through the sub, deep and hollow. That sounded different, Hess murmured. Another ping. Then tap, tap, tap. Elena's blood went cold. Was that feedback? Farouk's hands paused mid-gesture. No. That came after. Outside the viewport, a shape materialized in the gloom. The USS Cyclops loomed out of the dark like a nightmare half-remembered. Its frame was intact but coated in layers of growth, barnacles, coral, seaweed frozen like ivy. And yet it hovered, unmoving, as though gravity held no sway here. The Leviathan circled it slowly. Monroe mumbled a prayer under his breath. No damage, Elena whispered. How? Then they saw the lifeboat, still hanging from their pulleys, still neatly arranged. Why didn't they launch? Hess asked. No signs of panic, said Marlowe. No sign of anything. Let's breach the hull, Elena said. Open the starboard access point. We're going inside. The docking maneuver was smooth. The Leviathan latched onto the Cyclops' hull with magnetic clamp. A pressurized tunnel extended, sealing tightly to the old iron. The door hissed open. They crossed the threshold, stepping into history. The air was stale, metallic. Lights flickered on, though no one had flipped a switch. The corridor stretched ahead, longer than the scans suggested. Doors lined the hall, shut tight. Elena, Farouk said, pointing. These light fixtures, these aren't 1918 design. She turned. He was right. They were too clean, too modern. They moved forward. As they passed through the mess hall, they found plates still set with rusted cutlery. Mugs still held the dry crust of long-evaporated coffee. A playing card lay face-up on a table, the Queen of Spades, water-stained but whole. This is wrong, Marlowe muttered. This isn't how decay works. They reached the captain's quarters. The door creaked open. The logbook lay on the desk, bound in leather, untouched by time. Elena opened it. The last entry read, March 4th, 1918. The song is louder today. We steer not by compass now, but by hum. They say the stars look different below. If we pass through and you find this, tell them we only meant to go home." She closed the book slowly. Then the ship hummed. A low, resonant frequency vibrated through the floor, through their bones. The lights flickered again, then changed. No longer white, but a pale green, like algae-fed lanterns. "Contact surface," Marlowe barked. "No signal," Farouk said. "We've lost uplink." "Elena," Hess said, voice quiet. "Something's moving in the aft corridor." They turned. A shadow passed just beyond the bulkhead, fluid, human-shaped, but elongated in strange ways. "Argus 7's picking something up," Farouk said. "But it's not reflecting sonar properly. It's absorbing it." Elena stared into the dark. The Cyclops had not merely returned. It had been waiting. She took a slow breath, heart hammering in her chest. Whatever they had just found beneath the Atlantic, it was not a wreck. It was a door. And now it was open. The air inside the Cyclops was wrong. It wasn't the staleness. Elena had expected that, even welcomed it. A century of sea-locked stillness should have left the air dry, sour, metallic. But this air moved. It breathed in tandem with them. It carried a pressure not of depth, but of attention. Like walking into a cathedral where something watched, unseen. "Seal the hatch," Captain Marlowe ordered, his voice clipped. Hess moved without a word, initiating the pressure lock between the Cyclops and the Leviathan. The metal groaned in protest, a low warble that didn't match the strain they expected. Monroe muttered something under his breath again, another old seafarer's prayer, ancient and worn thin from use. "Comms are still down," Farouk reported, tapping at his wrist console. "No uplink to the Crown. No signal bounce from Argus 7 either." "We're blind," Marlowe said. "No," Elena corrected, eyes narrowing. "We're alone." The corridor ahead split into two directions. To the left, the crew quarters. To the right, the engine bay. "Stay together," Marlowe said. "We sweep the ship methodically. One section at a time. Elena, you lead with me. Hess, rear guard." They moved into the right corridor first, where the rust-darkened walls seemed to curve in impossible ways. What should have been a straight passage twisted subtly, imperceptibly, so that turning back revealed something different than what lay ahead. The geometry flexed like a muscle beneath the ship's skin. Monroe stopped suddenly and touched the wall with a gloved hand. "This metal's warm." "That's not possible," Farouk said. "We're 11 kilometers down. The hull should be near freezing." "It's pulsing," Monroe said, and withdrew his hand like he'd been scalded. They pressed on. The engine room, when they reached it, resembled no technology Elena had ever studied. The turbines were still. No power flowed, and yet the walls thrummed. A low, subaudible frequency, almost too deep to hear, resonated in their bones like memory. "Elena," Farouk said quietly, "look at this." She joined him before one of the main consoles, a boxy, ironclad thing, with analog gauges and corroded levers. But as Farouk pressed a palm to its surface, the panel shimmered, and something beneath blinked to life. Symbols crawled across the display, not letters, not from any language she knew, but shapes with intent. Angular and recursive, like they fed into themselves. The glyphs twisted as she stared, changing subtly, as if responding to her recognition. "That's not human writing," she murmured. "I think it's reacting to us," Farouk whispered. A low thud interrupted them. From the far end of the engine bay. Hess raised her weapon, eyes sharp. Another thud. Closer this time. Not metal against metal, but something softer, like wet flesh slapping steel. They backed out of the room as a shadow moved behind the generator core. Tall, too tall. It shifted with fluid grace, trailing darkness behind it like a cloak. But when Elena turned to look directly at it, there was nothing. Just the hum, louder now. "We're done here," Marlowe said. "Let's move." Back in the corridor, the lights had changed again. They glowed faint green, though none of them remembered turning them on. They headed toward the crew quarters next, the hall narrowing until it no longer resembled any naval blueprint. Elena felt her sense of space warping. What should have been a short walk became a slow, endless crawl through corridors that pulsed like living veins. They reached the first set of cabins. Inside were beds still made, uniforms hanging on pegs. There was no sign of struggle, no blood, no decay. Everything looked suspended, as though the crew had stepped out for a moment and might return any second. One bunk had a journal on its pillow. Elena picked it up and opened it. The writing was neat at first. Log entries dated up to early March 1918. Mentions of engine trouble, cargo shifts, strange compass behavior. Then, the entries shifted. March 1st. The birds stopped circling days ago. They flew in patterns like knots before they vanished. No sound outside. No fish. Just that hum. March 2nd. Night doesn't end here. The lights on deck don't reflect in the water. I saw a man in the mirror who wasn't me. March 3rd. The captain speaks to it now. Says we're chosen to witness the eye. He says we're a lens. The last page was blank, save for a deep gouge across the paper, as if something had dragged claws down the page. They checked more rooms. Each was a snapshot of quiet abandonment. A chess game in progress. A tray with crusted food. A child's drawing tacked to a wall, of a ship and something huge beneath it. Something circular with limbs. Then, finally, the bridge. Elena froze in the threshold. The crew was still there. 6 skeletal figures in tattered uniforms sat at their stations, unmoving. Their heads had slumped forward onto consoles, hands still resting on ancient controls. A century of death, yet their bones looked clean. Preserved. Like they died only hours ago. Monroe crossed himself. Dear God. No trauma, Hess said. No broken bones. No blood. They just stopped. Elena stepped closer to the captain's chair. In it sat a skeleton wearing what remained of a naval greatcoat. Captain George Worley. A name tag, still legible, hung from his chest pocket. His bony fingers were clutched tightly around something. She leaned in, gently prying it loose. A pocket watch. It was ticking. No way, Farouk breathed. She opened it. The inside lid bore an engraving. Time is the map, not the journey. The hands were spinning in reverse. Suddenly, the screens on the bridge, dust-covered CRT monitors no one had powered on, flickered to life. Static. Then a distorted feed. The submersible. The Leviathan. But wrong. The footage showed it empty. No crew. Lights dimmed. Its viewport glass cracked inward. What the hell are we watching? Marlowe asked. Then the screen changed. The crew. Them. Wandering the Cyclops, eyes hollow. Skin bloated, pallid, waterlogged. The footage jittered forward. Farouk screaming, clutching his head. Hess firing into darkness. Elena, backed into a corner, whispering something over and over in a language that wasn't English. Elena turned from the screen, bow rising in her throat. Shut it off. Farouk killed the feed, hands shaking. Silence returned, until they heard the humming again. Louder. And now, underneath it, a rhythm. A song. Low and ancient, like whale song layered with words no throat should form. The ship was singing. And someone was humming along. Not one of them. Elena turned. A figure stood at the end of the bridge, tall, cloaked in shadow. It shimmered like heat above asphalt. She blinked, and it was gone. But the door behind them had closed. The lights blinked out, then returned, this time red. Farouk screamed. A shape emerged from the wall beside him. From the wall, like the bulkhead had exhaled it. It brushed him with long, fingerless limbs, and he staggered, eyes wide, mouth agape. Elena! Marlowe shouted. Help me get him out. They dragged Farouk through the bridge doors and into the corridor. He was convulsing, whispering the same phrase over and over. Elena, Hess said. He's not speaking Arabic. Or any known language. I know, Elena whispered. I still understand him. Farouk's eyes rolled back. His voice deepened, harmonizing with the ship's hum. She's not a wreck, he said in a voice not his own. She's a cocoon. And then he passed out. They laid him in the Leviathan's airlock, sealing him off for medical isolation. Marlowe ran diagnostics. Farouk's vitals were stable, but his brainwave patterns were no longer human. Outside, the corridor lights flickered again. "Elena," Hess said, checking her console. "Something's moving between us and the crown. It's massive. It's not swimming. It's crawling." "We need to leave," Monroe growled. Elena looked back at the Cyclops' looming interior. There were still parts of the ship untouched. Still mysteries clawing at the edge of her mind. But something had changed. The ship had noticed them. Worse, it remembered them. "Begin ascent," she said. "Now." The Leviathan shuddered as it disengaged from the Cyclops. Outside, the trench walls seemed to ripple. A pressure built behind them, not water but weight, like the ocean was resisting their escape. Lights died one by one as they rose. Then the last thing Elena saw through the viewport, just before the trench swallowed everything, was a second Cyclops. Identical, resting just beyond the trench wall. And something standing on its deck. Watching. Waiting. They broke the surface 8 hours later, gasping at the sudden brightness of the world above. The Atlantis crown was silent. No response to hails. No movement on the decks. Just the open ocean and a ship that looked, somehow, older than when they left. And the air. The air had changed. The Leviathan docked in silence, the hiss of decompression unusually drawn out, as if the ship itself hesitated to let them in. When the hatch opened, the crew emerged into the familiar metallic corridor of the Atlantis crown, but the familiarity did little to ease the pressure lingering in their chests. Dr. Elena Voss stepped off the submersible first, her muscles aching, her mind fogged with residual fear. Behind her, Hess carried Farouk, limp and unresponsive, muttering in that still unrecognizable tongue. His eyes remained shut, his breathing shallow and uneven. Whatever had touched him on the Cyclops hadn't let go. The interior lights of the crown flickered as they walked. Elena noticed it immediately. A pattern. Every third light failed, every fifth buzzed like it held a voice just under the hum. There was no crew waiting at the bay. No chatter, no welcoming protocols. "Where is everyone?" Captain Marlowe asked. Monroe grunted. "This ship was full when we left." They moved quickly, Marlowe taking point. Hess hung back, watching every corner like a predator in enemy territory. Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something had arrived with them, something not entirely corporeal, not yet visible, but undeniably present. They reached the medbay and set Farouk on the examination table. The ship's AI, Halcyon, failed to respond to verbal commands. "I'm rerouting through the backup systems," Marlowe said, his fingers dancing over the interface. The main nodes glitching, showing corrupted sectors. "Like software rot?" Elena asked. "Like something's rewriting its code," he replied grimly. From the inside. Elena examined Farouk's vitals. His heartbeat was normal. Body temperature slightly elevated. But his brainwaves. The screen resembled interference, like he was tuned into a signal not meant for human minds. He murmured again. The same phrase. Over and over. Elena leaned closer. "It dreams through us." She turned pale. "That's what he's saying," she whispered. "It dreams through us." "What does that even mean?" Hess asked. Monroe, standing stiff near the door, finally spoke. "Means something wants out." They left Farouk under sedation and sealed the medbay behind reinforced glass. Elena programmed Halcyon to alert them if his vitals dropped, but even as she keyed in the commands, she felt a sense of futility. As if the ship itself had become unsure of its own purpose. Marlowe led them toward the command deck. The corridors were unervingly quiet, the air carrying a scent of rust and salt that hadn't been there before. Pipes groaned under unseen pressure. The walls looked damp. Then, as they approached the bridge, they heard it. A sound soft at first. Not machinery. Not feedback. Music. A lullaby. It came from the comms room. They entered slowly. The door creaked open and the sound grew clearer, a music box melody, but slowed, distorted, like it had been submerged for decades. The source was a transmission console. Active. Marlowe moved to kill the signal. Must be a ghost feed. No, Elena said, staring at the screen. It's live. Data flickered across the monitor. A location feed. Coordinates. That's in the trench, Hess said. Same as before. No, Elena replied. It's deeper. Hess looked at her. There's no deeper. There is now, Elena said. The Cyclops, it wasn't the destination. It was the surface. The music cut out abruptly. The screen flashed once. Then, a voice. Female. Familiar. Elena's. If you find this, leave. It's not a ship. It's a thought. And now it's awake. The message looped once, then vanished. A sharp alarm blared from Halcyon's network feed. Medbay vitals. Farouk, Elena said. Something's happening. They ran. But it was too late. The glass of the medbay observation window had spiderwebbed outward, as though struck from within by a force no human hand could replicate. Farouk was gone. The restraints hung slack, sliced open. The heart monitor beeped steadily, despite his absence. A trail of wet footprints led down the hall. Bare. Not human in shape. Seal the deck, Marlowe ordered. Lock down all hatches. Too late for that, Monroe said, pointing at the overhead vent. Salt water dripped from its edges. Hess swore under her breath. Elena approached the console again, pulling up the environmental readings. The Crown's internal pressure had shifted, fractionally, but enough to indicate displacement. Something was here. Something moving through vents and ducts, avoiding cameras. Every time Halcyon tried to track it, the sensors returned reflections of the crew. Does it even have a form? Elena asked. No, Marlowe said. It has memory. Of us, Monroe added darkly. They regrouped in the central hub, weapons drawn. Not that any of them truly believed bullets would matter. Hess loaded rounds into her rifle with methodical calm, but Elena saw the tremor in her fingers. Look at this, Monroe said suddenly, tapping his console. New sonar return. Just came in. The trench had shifted. On the display, the familiar topography of the Puerto Rico Trench was replaced by something deeper, wider, as though the ocean floor had peeled back, revealing a second void beneath the known one. In that darkness, a shape moved. It resembled the Cyclops, but it wasn't the same. Its proportions were wrong. Larger, asymmetric. It pulsed like a living heart. A new transmission crackled through the bridge speakers. Static at first. Then, a child's voice. We're still waiting. You found us once. Come see the rest. The power cut out. For 3 full seconds, only the emergency lights illuminated the bridge. Then a scream. They turned too slow. Monroe was gone. His console still glowed faintly. A single word blinked on screen in soft, cyan letters. Echo. They searched but found no blood. No struggle. Just his headset on the floor, still warm. It's picking us off, Hess said, barely above a whisper. One by one. Copying us, maybe. Marlowe's jaw tightened. We're abandoning ship. Then what? Elena asked. Run where? We took something from that trench, and now it knows the way back. No, Hess said. We didn't take something. She turned to Elena, eyes wide, unblinking. It came willingly. They retreated to the Leviathan, sealed the airlock, ran system checks. Everything seemed nominal, except for the logs. Someone or something had been inside. Footage from the submersible's onboard recorder showed them sitting calmly during the descent. But the timestamp was wrong. Off by hours. And in the corner of the frame, standing silently at the edge of vision, was a 7th figure. Unmoving. Watching. Its shape flickered when they stared too long. Scrub the footage, Marlowe said. Now. But Elena didn't move. She was staring at her own reflection in the viewport. Her face. Only it wasn't her. The eyes were wrong. Too wide. Too deep. Inside them, stars burned, impossibly far away and impossibly ancient. a reflection of things that watched from behind the world. Elena? Hess asked, stepping forward. The reflection blinked first. Elena turned away. We need to destroy it. The sphere. Whatever it is, it's not from here. Hess shook her head. It's not an object. It's not even a signal. It's a structure. A language built to be remembered. Marlowe spoke, slowly, choosing each word like stepping across thin ice. Are you saying it's viral? A cognitive parasite? Elena nodded. It's not trying to kill us. It's trying to spread. Thoughts are vessels. And we're the medium. From the corner of the room, Halcyon's voice finally returned. But distorted. You have already sent it. The data went live upon surfacing. Global relay completed. 7 minutes ago. They froze. No, Marlowe said. We kept the firewalls up. No uplink. Manual uplink was activated from engineering, Halcyon replied. Who? Elena asked. There was no answer. Only static. Only the slow, rising sound of the ship's systems humming in harmony with something unseen. Farouk's voice echoed from somewhere in the vents. It dreams through us. A klaxon blared overhead. Distress signal confirmed. An external ping. Another ship. Rescue. Or more minds to share the infection. They had minutes. Marlowe turned to Elena. Can we stop it? She looked at the console. Her hands hovered over the controls. We can try. Outside, the water began to churn, the trench shifting again. The shape that wasn't the Cyclops began to rise. The sea was burning. Not with fire, but with motion, unnatural, synchronized, as though the ocean itself had begun to breathe. From the observation deck of the Atlantis Crown, Dr. Elena Voss watched the swell of impossible waves move not with the wind, but with rhythm. Like a heartbeat. Like a signal. 4 minutes, said Captain Marlowe, voice terse, body tensed at the command console. Rescue ships entering proximity. They'll receive the signal. We have to stop it before then, Elena said, pulling up the ship's internal comm relay. Farouk's data triggered the uplink. If we can isolate the packet and scrub the transmission buffer. No, Hess interrupted from the far wall, her rifle slung but ready, her expression unreadable. Too late. You said it yourself, Elena. This thing doesn't transmit in frequencies. It transmits in memory. She turned slowly. So what are you saying? I'm saying it's in us now. In our thoughts. Maybe even in our dreams. You can't delete a virus when you are the virus. A heavy silence followed. Marlowe didn't look away from the console. How far has the signal spread? Halcyon, still flickering between voices and static, answered. Full terrestrial loop complete. 12 nodes infected. Estimated potential mines. 2.4 billion. Elena's chest tightened. We've already lost. No, Marlowe growled. Not if we shut down everything. Sever all power. Purge the mainframe. And sink the crown. Sink her? Elena asked. There's still time to isolate. There's no time, he snapped. We found the Cyclops. We opened it. That was our mistake. Now we have to contain the damage. Farouk's voice echoed again from somewhere in the ventilation system. His tone was calm now, almost amused. Containment is hope pretending it's not fear. Hess raised her rifle. Say the word. No, Elena said. We don't need violence. We need to close the loop. She turned to Marlowe, eyes fierce. The sphere. It's still in the engineering hold. We didn't destroy it when we had the chance. That's the anchor. You think destroying the sphere will cut the signal? He asked. It's not just transmitting, she said. It's nesting. That object, it's a foothold. The infection spreads through perception, but that thing draws perception to it. It's a gravitational idea. Hess stepped forward. Then we put it back where it came from. Marlowe narrowed his eyes. You're talking about returning it to the trench? No, Elena said. I'm talking about sending it deeper. They moved fast. The Leviathan was prepped in record time, reconfigured for one final descent. The plan was simple. Take the sphere, dive into the trench, and release it into whatever lay beneath the Cyclops, into the void that had grown there. Monroe was gone. Farouk, if he still existed as himself, was part of something else. Only 3 remained. Marlowe piloted. Hess monitored systems and perimeter. Elena held the containment capsule housing the sphere, now dormant but still pulsing gently, as if in anticipation. The descent began. Outside, the trench swallowed them whole, black and vast. No currents, no life, just silence. The kind of silence that suggested listening. "I don't see the Cyclops," Hess said. "Nothing on visual or sonar." "That's because it's above us," Elena replied. "We're beneath its echo now." As they passed the 35,000-foot mark, time seemed to stretch. The depth gauge glitched. Halcyon reported internal temperature fluctuations, despite full system isolation. "I think the ship is reacting," Marlowe muttered. "To what?" Elena asked. "To us leaving." The deeper they went, the more the light changed. Not artificial light, but a strange phosphorescence that seemed to leak from the very water around them. It shimmered in patterns. Symbols. Like writing etched into motion. "I see it," Hess whispered. Far below, the sea opened into a space that should not exist, an abyss within the abyss. And in its heart, a shape, vast, shifting, neither fully geometric nor organic. The Leviathan's instruments went dead. "This is it," Elena said. "Release the capsule." Marlowe hesitated. "Now," she said. He triggered the release. The capsule jettisoned into the dark, descending into that vast nothing. As it drifted, the sphere inside bloomed, unfolding not physically, but conceptually. Shapes bent around it. Space warped. The trench itself screamed, not with sound but with understanding. They had been noticed again. The Leviathan shook violently. "Pressure spike," Hess called out. "We have to ascend." Marlowe pulled them hard up. Behind them, the void churned, collapsing inward like an eye closing. "I think we did it," Elena said, her voice shaking. Then the Leviathan stopped. Not physically, not mechanically. It had ceased to move. The controls responded, but nothing changed. Outside, the water was motionless. Above them, the trench seemed farther than it should be. Below, the void still pulsed. And something stood before them. It had no form, yet it was there. Not outside the ship, but within their minds, projected through memory, through fear, through the space thought occupied. It looked like them, and not. It spoke with Farouk's voice. Monroe's. Elena's own. "This is not containment. This is communion." She reached forward instinctively, but her hand trembled. Her body felt too light. Her thoughts too loud. "We gave it form," she whispered. "We mapped it by looking. We made it real." Marlowe gritted his teeth. "We can still leave." He rerouted power. Overrode Halcyon. Forced a hard burn to the surface. And the Leviathan moved. Slowly, painfully, like swimming through memory. The trench wall rippled beside them like skin. Shapes writhed inside it, eyes, mouths, hands. As they ascended, the pressure began to return to normal. Instruments came back online. They broke the surface an hour later. But the sea was different now. Flat, black, still. The Atlantis crown floated on the horizon, smaller than it should be. As they approached, it became clear the ship had aged. Paint peeled. Metal rusted. Moss coated the deck. As if decades had passed in the hours they were gone. On the deck, Elena stepped out and looked skyward. No stars. Just one single point of light. Pulsing. Watching. Back in the Leviathan, a message blinked on the console. No sender. No origin. Just a single phrase. "Do not return. You are not the first. It dreams through you still." And beneath it, a signature. USS Cyclops. Elena stood on the deck and closed her eyes. They had won nothing. They had delayed it. But every thought, every word, every retelling was another crack in the seal. And the world was listening.